Hey guys, happy first day of the week, work week. Hope everybody survived Snowzilla okay. That's right. Oh, very, very well put, Brad.
Oh, we're working.
I can assure you I was logged in the entire time, ready for action. Anyway, welcome back, everyone, including Leslie. It is Wednesday, and welcome to the State Department. And I don't have anything at the top, believe it or not, so I'll take your questions.
I had some follow-up questions on last week's discussion about the visa waiver program, but
Okay.
I'm thinking there may be more pressing global concerns than the travel plan. Please.
As you, I'm sure, will have seen, the Syrian High Negotiations Committee has said that they've written to the UN and that they have a series of answers that they want before deciding whether or not to go to the UN-sponsored peace talks. And in particular, the things that they've talked about, at least publicly, include an end to the violence, release of prisoners. Are these, in your view, reasonable things for them to seek before going?
Sure. Not sure I answered your question, but let me answer that question. So we've encouraged the Syrian Opposition's High Negotiations Committee to respond positively to Special Envoy de Mistura's invitation. And as you know, Secretary Kerry met last weekend in Riyadh with the HNC to express our focus on the need for a political transition, a ceasefire, and a need to implement confidence-building measures, including immediate humanitarian access to many of these hard-to-reach areas in Syria. So we believe that the HNC delegation and the various factions of the Syrian opposition have an historic opportunity to go to Geneva and propose serious practical ways to implement a ceasefire, humanitarian access, and other confidence-building measures, and that they should do so without preconditions. We believe it should seize this opportunity to test the regime's willingness and intentions and expose before the entire world which parties are serious about a potential peaceful political transition in Syria and which are not. Now, sorry, just a quick follow-up, but I don't want to necessarily say that we don't take the Syrian opposition's call for humanitarian access and a ceasefire not seriously, that we don't take them seriously. We do, in fact, take them seriously. My only point here, and our only point here, is that the Syrian people are looking to this process, and they need signs of hope that they're not destined to live in conflict indefinitely. And frankly, Secretary Kerry raised this very point when he spoke to the agency last Saturday. The world is outraged by the dire situation in Magaya and elsewhere, by the continued barrel bombing and airstrikes that destroy homes and hospitals and kill countless civilians. But there's an urgency to getting these talks started. Go ahead, Arshad. I'm sorry.
Why should they go without preconditions? I mean, if they are purporting to represent a group of people that are being shelled bombed, starved, does it not seem to you that if they show up, they just lose credibility with all the people on the ground because they're sitting in a hotel or somewhere in Geneva talking indirectly to the very people who are crushing the people they represent? Why do you think it is not reasonable for them to hold out for something rather than sit down with the people who have been whom they've been fighting for 5 years?
Well, as I said, we do understand, we share the opposition's belief that Assad and his regime must stop blocking food and humanitarian assistance and stop barrel bombing the Syrian people and attacking civilians. That goes without saying. But we, the UN, the other members of the ISSD have set in place a process here that we believe can lead to a political transition, and we don't want to delay the start of that transition. That's not to say that any of these demands should be taken off the table, that they should be somehow put aside and not addressed. The pressure needs to be kept on the regime to, in fact, adopt some of these, as we say, confidence-building measures to take steps. But this is going to be a long process, and everyone fully recognizes that it's going to be a long and challenging process. We feel that it's important to get that process going.
Yeah. The United States and the Russians cannot even get the Syrian government to reduce the violence, to engage in talks. What on earth makes you think that once the talks have begun, it will be possible to convince the government to reduce the violence?
Well, again, and just to talk a little bit about the process. I mean, we're talking about proximity talks. These are going to take some time. No one is expecting some kind of 180-degree turnaround on the part of anyone in a matter of days or even weeks. But when you get people talking back and forth, you can create some measure of negotiations and some measure of dialogue that we believe could, and nobody's predicting that it will, but could lead to some concrete steps on the part of the regime. Look, I think also it's very important to recognize that, and the regime needs to recognize this, and frankly it's up to Russia, and we've talked about this before, to convince the regime of this fact, that there is no military solution to what's going on in Syria right now. So they need a political process here. And I know there's been reports of recent gains on the battlefield by the Syrian regime. They need to be disabused of the idea that there's some kind of political, some kind of military way out for them.
Why don't you, if you said that you share the opposition demands, if so, why don't you press the Syrian regime and Russia to implement some of these demands instead of pressing the opposition to go to Geneva?
Sure. Well, we've been doing both. I mean, to be perfectly honest, we have been. I mean, we don't directly speak to the regime, but through the Russians, and the Secretary's been on the phone multiple times over the long weekend. Not long weekend for him, he was actually working the entire time. But he's been on the phone multiple times with other members of the ISSD, but also with Foreign Minister Lavrov, talking about the need for the regime to take these steps.
Something to happen on the ground before Friday?
I mean, obviously, we would welcome any kind of confidence-building measure going into the talks. Given that they're 2 days away, I can't predict anything at this point. Please.
On the Geneva Truth Conference, the leader of the main Kurdish party in Syria, PYD, has said that he has not, or any member of his party has not been invited for that Geneva Truth. What is the U.S. take on that? The main Kurdish party in Syria, why haven't they been invited? What is your take on that?
So these were invitations that were issued by Stefan de Mistura. I refer you to him and to his party or his group that to the UN for the rationale behind who they invited. Obviously, there was a vetting, there was a meeting in Saudi Arabia for choosing the members of the HNC. I can say that, in general, Kurds have been included in this entire process. They were represented in last month's opposition conference in Riyadh, in fact, where some 115, 116 participants did establish the HNC. So I'm not sure, are you speaking specifically about,
PYD, I mean the Kurds in general, but the
I
largest.
understand, so the UN hasn't announced its list of invitees, or those extended in an advisory role. But our understanding is that the PYD will not be participating, in this week's talks.
Your position as the U.S. government.
Not our position, it's up to say that's my understanding.
Do you believe they should have been invited? The Russians say they should be invited. Lavrov himself said that without the PYD, there will not be a quote-unquote definitive resolution for the conflict in Syria.
Yeah, and I'll just say that, I understand there's differing views and different opinions on the inclusion or exclusion from the process. I just say we stand by the HNC, its current composition, and the choice by Staffan de Mistura to invite additional representatives also to participate in this process. We stand by the process thus far, how it's chosen who represents the Syrian opposition. Yeah, go ahead.
Couple things. You said it's no preconditions. When did this become a guiding principle? I mean, I thought you had a meeting in Riyadh where you wanted all the opposition to accept the Vienna statement, and you wanted everyone to accept the UN Security Council resolution. There's a lot of preconditions so far. When did this new no preconditions start?
Well, again, what the Vienna statement did was codify a process in which we want both or all sides to participate in as a way to reach a political transition in Syria. And this week's meeting is really the start of that between the two different sides, the regime and the Syrian opposition. So I guess what I'm saying is, by saying we don't want, these demands or preconditions, the ceasefire, end to barrel bombing, and also humanitarian access to some of these areas, to stand in the way of getting that process going. We understand that these are valid concerns, urgent concerns on the part of the Syrian opposition. We want to see movement on them as well, but we don't want to see them stop this process from starting.
So talk for peace. Don't expect peace to happen before you even start talking, essentially.
Essentially.
And then you said you don't expect anyone to change their position in days or weeks. Wasn't it the goal of the U.S. to get a security committee and a transitional governing body by April as part of its kind of vision of how this process would happen?
Sure.
It's not 2 or 3 weeks, it's 12 weeks or 10 weeks.
No, I think, and de Mistura has spoken to this himself, this is the beginning of a process that's going to span the course of, he put it several months, so that would put it on that time frame. Of course, given the challenges, given the issues, that's I think an optimistic assessment. But we need to get the process started. That's why there's an urgency here. There could be any number of things that will happen along the way in these talks that delay them further. So we need to keep the momentum up. I think that's the point.
And then my question is very similar to our side. How important is it that something very quickly, even if it's not a definitive agreement, some of these major things, these demands that were cited are realized?
Mm-hmm.
When you're talking about opposition people who are going to be traveling for several months, if this happens, and any day their kids, fighters, wives, whatever, could be killed.
Yeah.
How important is it to get something very quickly to build confidence?
Without defining it very quickly, and just because these are negotiations and they're starting as proximity talks and not direct talks. And this, again, I don't mean to overstate it, but this in and of itself is a significant step forward if we get them to Geneva on Friday. But absolutely, I agree with you. It is important, and we've said this, that there are confidence-building measures, that there's a need for a ceasefire, immediate humanitarian access. There's any number of steps that can be taken that would help build on the momentum.
The British Home Office sent out a statement criticizing the Syrian government and Russia's support around this area of Al-Sheikh, this scheme, this town, and saying that it would it could damage these peace talks. And you mentioned this too. There's military advances, gains that the Syrian government has made. Do these advances damage the peace talks, and what impact do they have?
Well, I did mention it, and I guess my answer would be we hope not, and we don't want there to be this kind of, as I said to Arshad, this kind of belief among those in the regime that enough progress has been made, or that they're somehow winning on the battlefield, that they feel that they don't have to pursue peace talks. And again, just to disabuse them of the idea that there's some kind of military solution to what's happening in Syria. And that's something, again, these talks going forward is a little bit of a forcing mechanism. Russian officials have said, publicly and privately, that they agree that the only solution in Syria is a political transition. So we need to keep the momentum up. They need to exert what influence they have on the Assad regime to convince them that these talks need to continue.
So, about the Russian role in this, they're supporting these gains that the Syrian government is making, and they're specifically attacking opposition groups that they have said themselves are members of the opposition and not terrorists or ISIS or Al Qaeda.
Yeah.
So, is their role? How do you characterize their role? Is the United States and Russia working towards the same goals here, or not?
Well, again, I think, to use a pretty hackneyed expression, but the proof is in the pudding. I mean, they have said publicly and privately that they support a political transition. That said, Russia's invested years in keeping Assad and keeping his regime in power. It's stepped up that investment, if you will, in the past months. And, I would say its recent activities show once again that it's more interested in bolstering Assad than fighting ISIL. But that said, they have been supportive of this process. They've been a vocal member of the ISSG. And so I think at this point, given that they are a significant stakeholder in this process, we need to take them at their word. We need to move this process forward and see what comes of it.
Yes, question. That no precondition advice that you gave now to the Syrian opposition, that doesn't seem to apply to Turkey, because it's Turkey is they openly said that if the PYD is included in the talks, we will not participate. Would your advice go for the Turks as well?
Turkey is, as we said, a member of the ISSG and a stakeholder in this process. They obviously have their concerns, very real and almost existential concerns about peace and stability in Syria, because it threatens them directly. It's on their border. They have their concerns. They've been very vocal about their concerns with this process as it moves forward. But the exclusion of the PYD, at least in this initial round of talks, was a decision taken by de Mistura and his people, and it was partly a reflection of, again, these meetings to define the Syrian opposition and to basically choose who among the Syrian opposition would represent them going forward into these talks, and we respect that process.
The Turks as well, to have no preconditions.
Again, I'm not going to reveal or talk about what our conversations with the Turks, with the Turkish authorities are. I can say that we have very frank exchanges, as befitting a NATO ally and a strong partner in this process.
So, Mark, you described this process as these negotiations as a test of the Syrian government and the Russian support for this transition process, and I guess other parties involved also.
Yeah.
And at the same time, the Russians and the Syrians are providing, additional support to the fight, or to their side of the fight. At what point does the United States decide that that this test may be that they failed the test and decide to increase to increase pressure or change the balance of power on the ground in support of the people that the Americans are supporting?
Sure. I think, that's a very valid but also very difficult question to answer. I would say we're still committed, strongly committed to seeing this process move forward. We feel like since really this process began and has taken shape throughout the autumn, that we have gathered a little momentum here, that we have moved the parties together in the sense of having these talks, and that we've got to keep that momentum going.
There's been a report in the German press that German intelligence says that the number of radicals heading into Syria has increased rather than decreased in recent months. How are we progressing with the Turks in sealing that border?
Sure.
And do you share this assessment that the inflows are continuing to rise?
Well, so I haven't seen those particular reports, but we continue to work on the very complex and very difficult issue of foreign fighter flow. It's clearly a matter of concern when you look at, the terrorist attacks in Paris and elsewhere in December. And we're working with Turkey on a variety of ways to increase the security along its border and to close off or seal that remaining 98 kilometers to ensure that ISIL can no longer use it to gain access to Syria and vice versa. That was a key focus of Joint Chief of Staff Chairman Dunford's visit to Turkey, and was obviously also a key part of the Vice President was just there, and a key part of his trip as well. We think it's become harder. We think they've strengthened the border, but clearly there's still more work to be done. I just don't have, if I do have a response to that specific number, I'll get back to you.
Okay. Now, it seems to be taking quite a lot of heavy lifting with very senior officials repeatedly going to Turkey to talk to them. They're an NATO ally and they're part of the coalition. Why does it take so much diplomatic effort to...
Well, I don't know that it takes so much diplomatic effort. I think that, in some respects, yes, it's only 98 kilometers. It's a persistent problem. But, we are absolutely convinced that Turkey understands the magnitude of the problem. Again, this affects, as they've seen with countless terrorist attacks on their own soil, this affects them as much as the rest of Europe and the rest of the world. So, we're absolutely convinced that they want to stop that flow of foreign fighters, that they need to seal off their borders. It's a challenge, and we're working with it. And I think it just reflects how seriously we both take the challenge. Please, Michael. Yeah.
That the Greek and Israeli defense ministers, yesterday they called on the Turkish government to stop supporting terrorism. The Greek defense minister said the bulk of Islamic State oil and terrorist financing flows through Turkey. How does this square with the previous statement that the Turkish government is not involved in these areas, terrorist financing activities or the oil trade?
So thanks for the question, Michael. We've addressed this on multiple occasions, and I would also point, I don't have the document in front of me, but we actually did a background briefing with a senior State Department official who really walked through why this wasn't a valid allegation or accusation to say that Turkey was actually smuggling ISIL or Daesh oil. It didn't make, first of all, economic sense at all, but secondly, there was just no evidence to those allegations that there was some kind of high-level Turkish government involvement in some oil smuggling. We just have not seen any inclination to that, any kind of sign of that. So
they had it wrong.
So we disagree with that assessment.
Even if there's no hard evidence, are you concerned about neglect facilitating this process? Do they need to crack down on extremists more?
Well, I think, look, first of all, as we all know, smuggling along that area or in that area is frankly centuries old. There's established smuggling routes, and those are persistent, and they're difficult to squelch altogether. We, the United States, reject the premise that the Turkish government is somehow in league with ISIL to smuggle oil. We just see no evidence to support that accusation.
But is it more they're looking the other way though? Not necessarily.
I can't say that there's no type of smuggling taking place along the border. There may well be, but it doesn't make economic sense. It's not how ISIL moves its commodity, and frankly, we've seen that ISIL has the more prevalent practice is for ISIL to sell its oil at the wellhead, the point of production in Syria and in Iraq, frankly, and the oil is sold directly to smugglers and middlemen and truckers, rather than ISIL kind of engaging in some broad distribution network. It's quite the opposite. Please.
Follow up. You talk about Vice President Biden's visit, Mark. Since the Vice President did not take any questions in Turkey, we are curious what kind of progress made regarding that 98 kilometers, but on the other side of the border. Is there some kind of agreement? Do you know who are going to do the work in that particular area?
When you say the other side of the border...
on Syria, on Syrian part, where the ISIS is present.
First of all, on the Vice President's, not to get too interagency here, but I would refer you to the Vice President's office to talk in detail about his trip there. He did have, though, very good talks and spoke about the work that the U.S., that Turkey, and indeed the whole anti-ISIL coalition needs to do to destroy and degrade ISIL in Syria. That there's been progress made, but there's a heck of a lot more work that needs to be done, and we need to work more closely together to reach that goal.
Another question. The question many Turkish journalists are asking: why the American officials, when they are together with Turkish officials for a number of years now, are not taking questions from the press?
Oh gosh, I'm sorry. I don't really know what decisions were made, or in terms of his press availability. A lot of that comes down to simple logistics, whether he or any official has the time to do a press availability when they're on the ground in any given country. I can't speak to the details of the Vice President's trip. I know with Secretary Kerry, we always try to carve out some time to do media availabilities. Sometimes those are shorter than other times, but we always try to work that in some respects.
A number of European countries, but particularly Denmark, just passed a law which allows Danish authorities to seize valuables from migrants. I think there are similar laws, not as rigid as this one. Do you have any position on this kind of law?
Really, you're talking about the Danish law?
Yes.
I'd refer you to the Danish authorities. There's a number of things that countries in Europe, a number of steps that these European countries are taking to deal with the influx of refugees and the impact that that's having on the economy, on other aspects of life in these countries. It's been an enormous, extraordinary, if you will, surge of refugees coming into Europe. I think what we've said all along is, in dealing with this surge of influx of refugees into Europe, that there needs to be a comprehensive approach to dealing with it. That all the countries that are dealing with this influx need to agree on how they're going to deal with that and come up with a way to treat These refugees, many of whom are fleeing violence, fleeing persecution in a way that is systematic but also humane and takes into consideration the dire circumstances that they're both fleeing and then oftentimes landing into in these countries. Please,
I have a couple different topics.
go for it.
Move on.
Well, okay.
Well, first of all, the Clinton emails,
Okay.
have you heard back from the judge on your request for more time for publication, or are you planning to publish on Friday, as it were?
So we have not heard back. You're referring, sorry, just to set the context here, you're referring to the court extension request that we submitted last Friday. We filed a motion in the Freedom of Information Act case and litigation, Leopold v. State, and that's the case involving our monthly release of former Secretary Clinton's emails. And we did, as you noted, ask for an extension, a 1-month extension to February 29th to finish our production of these emails. So at this point in time, we've not received a decision on whether this extension would be granted. What I can say is that it's our intention to move forward with another production of emails, former Secretary Clinton's emails, on January 29th as planned. Recognizing that we'll, as we put forth in this motion, we'll not meet the deadline or the goal of producing the remaining emails. But we're going to strive to produce as many documents as we possibly can. And I can assure you that the team working on this has worked long hours. They even came in this past weekend during the snowstorm to continue working on meeting the production goals. But we also recognize, for a number of reasons, that we're probably not going to get there this month. We need an additional month.
Okay.
You will have some kind of relief on Friday,
That's correct.
just not complete.
That's correct.
Um,
Okay,
because one, two, unless there's more follow-up on this question.
anything on?
Kind of.
Okay, let's
Okay.
do your
My other,
comments on this.
sorry, my other question was also a technical one, on the visa waiver issue. You know, one of the things you said last week was that journalists and others could be waived by case basis. You might have seen that, for instance, the New York Times bureau chief in Tehran had his, got word back that he now has to apply for a visa. So I'm wondering how this is really going to work with these waivers, and are you guys stacked up in London and Paris and elsewhere for lots of people requiring visas, you know?
Sure. So, it's a totally fair question. So a couple of thoughts and to give you. One is that as the U.S. government is working to implement this new law, travelers that may fall into any one of the waiver categories, as you mentioned, journalism is one of them, should apply for a visa at this time until implementation is complete. And so where we're working, or what direction we're working in now, is we're going to, Department of Homeland Security, in fact, is working on updating the ESTA form that will be available in February. And once available, we do encourage travelers seeking an ESTA to use the enhanced system, which will assist in making individual determinations on the potential granting of these waivers. And we've said before, these will be made on a case-by-case basis. But any travelers who believe they may fall into these waiver categories, but who do have an immediate need to travel, we would encourage them to request an expedited visa appointment with their nearest embassy or consulate. In terms of stepping up our support, we are in fact doing that, and many, if not all, of our consulates and embassies throughout the visa waiver program countries, and we're obviously going to look at what the demand is and adjust accordingly. But we're certainly looking at surging some of our capacity to deal with increased demand for visa appointments. And again,
Haven't seen that yet then.
not yet, frankly. And again, what we're, and what I tried to explain last week is, it is, if you, there are advantages and disadvantages to visa waiver travel versus a visa. I mean, a visa is valid for 10 years versus ESTA, or rather a visa waiver travel, which I think is only good for a couple years, if that, 20 months. If you have a need to travel, urgent, and you think you fall into these categories, or you've received an email that you're no longer eligible to travel via visa waiver program, then please, we encourage these people to make non-immigrant visa appointments. And again, we're staffed up and ready to go to accommodate any influx that's going to mean in our embassies throughout Europe, mostly.
And have you heard anything about reciprocity from other countries? Or do you have any messages to Iranian Americans or Sudanese Americans or Syrian Americans about
Sure.
whether they may face this kind of restriction?
On the question, first of all, on the question of reciprocity, we have not seen anything yet from any of the countries affected by the visa waiver program or affected by this new legislation that indicates one way or another that there's going to be any kind of reciprocity. In terms of our message to so-called dual nationality citizens who may be affected by these changes, I think it's recognizing that this may be an inconvenience, and I fully recognize that. We fully recognize that. But it's important, I think, to keep focused on the big picture, and that is that this legislation in no way prohibits the travel to the United States of anyone. And what it does do is it makes ineligible certain categories of travelers to come here via the visa waiver program. But they are simply required to follow the normal visa application process. We're staffed up and ready to accommodate these people, and we would encourage them to simply follow through with that process.
In about 5 years. I think that's how I view this work to begin with.
Because you're a troublemaker.
The question, why?
I have no idea, actually. It's because of your what category is it?
I'm a visa, I'm a visiting correspondent.
That's why.
So I have a follow-up on this. You announced last week that you were starting the implementation of the new law.
Yes.
And you have said all along that it would be phased implementation. And today you just explained that you don't actually have ready yet, and it won't be ready until sometime in February, the new form that would allow people who've been informed that their ability to travel under the visa waiver program using ESTA has been revoked. That if they need a visa, they should apply for one now because that form won't be ready until next month sometime. Why didn't you, just as a matter of efficiency and clarity, why didn't the State Department implement all of this on a specific date certain so that everything would go into effect at the same time and you wouldn't have had the BBC reporter who was told that they couldn't travel and and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
Why not, just as a matter of practicality, just say, okay, we're going to do this starting April 15th?
Right. So a couple of thoughts on that. One is that this was enacted mid-December, and we were bound by law to begin implementing it. It was enacted by Congress, and it is, you mentioned the State Department, but this actually is an interagency effort, and a lot of the responsibility, frankly, for implementing it does lie with the Department of Homeland Security, which I did mention. And they're the ones looking at how to recreate or revamp the ESTA form so that it reflects better reflects the changes that this new legislation enacts. At the same time, I think in an effort to deal with the inevitable strain that this is going to cause on people, we set about, we working with DHS, set about identifying those who would be affected by this right away, who fell into those categories of ineligibility. And we have taken steps to identify them through emails. That's the idea of a phased approach. I do agree that it can be somewhat confusing, and certainly we stand ready to answer questions and also provide as clearly as possible information to would-be travelers or those affected by this. And frankly, I do want to put on record, I can put on record, the fact that there is a website now that does have all of this information available. And let me just give that on the record. I apologize, but it's important because you said there, as you say, there is a lot of confusion about this. If you all visit, or anyone can visit travel.state.gov for detailed information about these changes as well as about the visa application process. You know, aside, I think, you know, we're trying to the best of our ability to implement these changes to the legislation as quickly and efficiently as possible, as we are mandated by Congress to do. At the same time, make systemic changes that it requires, the ESTA form and other aspects of it. You know, is it causing inconveniences? Probably, but we're working hard to address them.
When the new form is available in April, is it just a matter for us of ticking in the box marked journalists, or will that then be...
Very concerned about...
Well, that I have a number of colleagues who are going to be inconvenienced by
what
this.
it's going to look like. And frankly, I don't know.
But is it just our declaration that we're journalists, or do you then have to go and check that we're not lying?
I have to refer you to DHS on what this thing's going to look like. My sense is that it will try to, in a very user-friendly way, try to clarify what might apply to you or how you may apply for these exemptions, or whether you apply. These exemptions apply to you, rather. Please.
Different topic?
Can we move from the visa waiver? Thank you. I know I have to get back to your comments. I haven't forgotten.
This is a follow-up to something from last week. Now that the CDC has issued interim travel guidance for countries in the area that was affected by the Zika virus, do you have any guidance to issue to Americans about their travel there, or Americans who live in the affected area?
Sure. And apologies. Correct me. Is it Zika or Zika? I don't.
Zika, sorry.
It's okay. I just didn't know. I didn't want to mispronounce it. It's okay. I can say that the department is monitoring the evolving situation very closely. We are obviously in close contact with the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. We're also in contact with the government of Brazil, which has been probably the most impacted country, as well as others throughout the region. The CDC did issue updated guidance on Zika on January 26th, and we refer you to the CDC for additional technical information on the guidance. I know, obviously, the safety and security of U.S. citizens overseas is a top priority for the State Department. And through our consular information program, we'll provide U.S. citizens with up-to-date information about security abroad and other aspects of their travel abroad, so they can make well-informed decisions. And we're also, in terms of, we've also reviewed, the Center for Disease Control's information regarding the Zika virus, and we're going to provide links to the updated information in our country-specific information pages. You know, there's a lot of, obviously, concern about the impact of this virus, not just in Latin America, or South America, rather, but frankly, throughout the Western Hemisphere. You know, I think we all need to do our best to provide as quickly and as easily as possible good, solid, credible information so that travelers can make good decisions about their travel. Please.
Thank you, Mark.
I'll get back to you, I promise.
Thank you, Mark. On Secretary visit to China, and he had a meeting with Xi Jinping, President Xi Jinping, and the Foreign Minister Wang Yi. Okay. So, and Secretary Kerry mentions that he has not successfully reached agreement for more strong sanctions on North Korea. can you tell us more about what is the difference of views between U.S. and China for the sanctions against the North Korea?
Well, and I would refer you to the press availability you did after his, I guess it was his meeting with Foreign Secretary Yi earlier today. Secretary was very clear saying it was probably the issue that topped their agenda was North Korea, and the issue that they spent the most time talking about. We do obviously agree that North Korea's behavior, most recently through its attempted test of a hydrogen bomb last month, is reckless, is dangerous for the security and stability of the Korean Peninsula and, frankly, the region. And so there's an urgency there to convince the government to change its current course of action. And I think that they being Secretary and his Chinese counterparts, had a good, thorough, substantive discussion about the ways that we can do that. I think that there was agreement on the need for meaningful steps to get to the goal of North Korea returning to talks. And there was a little back and forth about sanctions being a means to an end, and that end should always be a return to six-party talks. But sanctions are, frankly, one of our most effective tools to convince them of that.
To the hydrogen bomb last month.
We never, I think, verified that.
Right.
That it was. In fact,
Right, I thought you used the word attempted. Did you, or did I mishear?
I did. Did I misstate? I'm sorry.
No, I thought you said attempted, and the reason I'm asking about it is that my understanding was the administration has always said that it wasn't that your understanding was it was a conventional atomic bomb, not a hydrogen
Right,
bomb.
that's right. I said they, in fact, came out and said, if I didn't mischaracterize that at all, it was unintentional.
No.
I just sort of simply say that they claimed it was the test of a hydrogen bomb.
Right.
We said otherwise.
Yes, but you're not. I guess my question is whether you believe that they were in fact attempting to test a hydrogen bomb, or not. If you believe they were just doing an ordinary non-hydrogen bomb.
And it was unclear to us. They stated afterwards that they thought it was a hydrogen bomb test. We said otherwise. We were unconvinced that it was that, for a variety of scientific reasons. But in any case, it was reckless and dangerous action.
But by saying their attempted test, are you conveying that you believe that that was indeed what they were trying to do, or are you just saying that that's what they claimed they were trying to do? Okay, thanks.
Mark, on this issue,
Just really quickly, so just to finish, so I think we both agree that one of the key ways forward, key paths forward, is through the UN Security Council. We're going to continue to work with China in that process.
have said that they might be. I think they said that they're open to the idea of a resolution, but not sanctions at the Security Council. And you're saying that that there needs to be some ways to pressure North Korea to change its behavior and to return to these six-party talks. Other than sanctions, what are the options?
Well, I mean, there's I don't want to necessarily lay out all the tools, but sanctions are, frankly, a very potent tool, as we've seen with Iran. And we believe that, if necessary, sanctions can be strengthened. But again, I think the important point here is that there is agreement between us and China that North Korea needs to change its ways.
Yeah, I think last week the South Korean President Park Geun-hye recommended the five-party talks instead of a six-party talks. How do you U.S. Think about this?
We've seen his comments. I mean, five-party talks are a chance for those of us who agree on North Korea's behavior and the need to persuade it or to get it to change its ways. Occasionally do need to get together and talk about this. We do this all the time. We consult bilaterally, multilaterally with the other members of the of that mechanism on ways to confront and to get North Korea to change its ways. So we would support that dialogue going forward. Please. On North Korea.
Taiwan?
Please, Taiwan and South
Yeah,
Korea.
the president of Taiwan, the President Ma, is going to travel to Taiping Island, and what's your comment on it?
Sure, hold on one second, please.
Sure.
You're talking about, President Ma Ying-jeou's plans to travel to Taiping Island, I think. Frankly, we're disappointed. We view such an action as unhelpful, and it does not contribute to the peaceful resolution of disputes in the South China Sea. We urge Taiwan and all claimants to lower tensions and de-escalate tensions rather than taking actions that could possibly raise them.
During the China built the rock, that the U.S. don't even use the wording like disappointed and unhelpful. Why is this time that you pick up these two wording on Taiwan? Is it fair enough for all the claimants?
Well, look, I'm not going to. We've been very clear that we disagree with China's actions in terms of man-made structures on the island. We view them also as unhelpful and that they don't lead to a peaceful resolution of the disputes over the South China Sea. We want to see a halt among all claimants to further land reclamation, construction of new facilities, militarization of outposts. All of that would help lower tensions and create space for peaceful resolution.
Will it affect the U.S.-Taiwan relations?
I'm not aware that we had a conversation with them. I just don't know.
Will it affect the U.S. and Taiwan's relations?
Will it affect?
How will it affect?
We have very strong relations with Taiwan. Sometimes we disagree on their actions. We're committed to a one-China policy. We look forward to the incoming president and building stronger relations with Taiwan. But we disagree on this particular act. Please.
Use some of the harsh words on President Ma's trip to the Taiping Island. Taiping is the largest natural island in the South China Sea that the Republic of China has claimed since 1946 and has occupied since 1966. Why can't we do that? Taiwan is probably the last party to want to raise tensions in the South China Sea. But it has a voice that it wants the international community to hear. When you consult on the South China Sea, when you discuss the disputes in the South China Sea, Taiwan is never a party to be invited to the table. For instance, Secretary Kerry talked about a diplomatic approach to the disputes in the South China Sea in Beijing today. Would the United States make sure that Taiwan would be invited to the table as a party to the diplomatic approach? Thank you.
So, I can't speak to whether we would invite Taiwan to take part in any diplomatic conversations, except to say that, and just to address your first part of your question, which is why not have its voice be heard by traveling to Taiping Island. Taiwan is, or rather, President Ma Ying-jeou has every right to make his position clear on the South China Sea. We just disagree with this particular action. We view it as, frankly, as raising tensions rather than what we want to see, which is de-escalation. We do want to see dialogue. We welcome all voices in the region weighing in on that dialogue. And it's only through, as we've said many times, a diplomatic mechanism that we can successfully resolve the South China Sea. Taiwan is a valued partner. We do have a strong dialogue with them. we're going to continue to listen to their concerns and reflect their concerns in the various fora that address this issue. Please follow up.
Last one.
Are you on this? Okay, cool.
The point is Taiwan has long been excluded from the dialogue among the claimants of the South China Sea. And since the United States discouraged President Ma from visiting the island, what would you encourage the government of Taiwan to do as a claimant of the South China Sea?
Well, again, I mean, I'm not going to list the steps that Taiwan or the Taiwanese government should take and dictate to it in any way, shape, or form. I'm just saying that this particular action we view as unhelpful. Please.
I was wondering if there's any update on the case of an American woman from Texas who's been held in China, Sandy Fong Gillis. I believe we heard about her last in September, and I was wondering if the Secretary brought up her case during his recent trip to China.
You know what? I'm not sure. I don't believe I have an update on that particular case. I'm aware of the case, obviously. I can take the question. You know, we on her particular case, as to whether the Secretary raised it. I mean, you know, we raised human rights. We raised the welfare of American citizens detained abroad, and with multiple governments and multiple occasions. And certainly, we have those kinds of frank discussions with China all the time about human rights. I'll check on that as well. Back in North Korea. Okay, let's finish North Korea straight up, and then we'll go to Turkey again.
There are reports that North Korea is preparing a new missile test. Do you have any update or report on that? Do you know?
No, I don't. I mean, you know, it's a very opaque regime there, so obviously there are some indicators, but I can't speak to those.
You know if that has at all been has influenced the discussion in Beijing between Secretary Kerry and his counterpart?
Whether there's, I mean, look, there's always, you know, as we saw with the test last month, you know, there's always the threat that they're going to take these kinds of provocative actions. So I think, you know, there's always a sense of urgency because of that.
Yes, quick. North Korea announced North Korea saved the U.S. citizens, one student. Do you have any information on that?
I'm sorry, you said the
American citizen.
The American citizen?
Yeah.
Hold on a second. I don't have much new to say. I know we are aware of media reports that a U.S. citizen was detained in North Korea. I don't have any particular information about that. We obviously don't have a Privacy Act waiver, which, you know, would allow us to reveal more details. You know, in cases where U.S. citizens are detained in North Korea, we rely heavily on our Swedish embassy, which is our protecting power in North Korea, and try to reach out through them for consular access. Sure, can I just do
I have a couple of different topics of the South case. First, on Russia, near the U.S. Embassy in Moscow, there's a poster hanging, very kind of hostile to President Obama. I would like to get your stand on that.
You said a poster hanging near the embassy that's hostile to?
It's a quote, calling President Obama a killer. It's a laser projection, and there's a poster hanging across the street from the U.S. Embassy in Moscow. I wonder if you have any stance.
I mean, you know, I guess freedom of speech is freedom of speech, no matter where. But you know, we obviously would object strongly to any characterization of our president in such a way.
Topic about freedom of speech and human rights in Egypt. I wonder if you have anything on the fifth anniversary of the uprising, and also reports that hundreds of Egyptians were forced to disappear as the new security crackdown widens.
The second part of your question I'll answer first. We are aware of these reports. We would note with concern that the stark deterioration in respect for freedom of expression, association, and press in Egypt over the past weeks and months, including the arrest of journalists and civil society activists, and the intimidation of social media users. And we continue to have very frank discussions with the government of Egypt about our human rights concerns. More broadly, on the anniversary, the upcoming 5th anniversary of the Tahrir Square uprising in Egypt, the U.S.-Egyptian relationship is in many ways built on common interests such as combating terrorism. And as we've learned ourselves and learned in many countries, to eradicate violent extremism, it's critical to strengthen the ties of trust between the state and the public and enable those who are critical of official policies to find means of voicing their dissent peacefully. And so in this sense, realizing the desires, the aspirations, the ideals for which Egyptians spoke out 5 years ago would be not only the right thing to do, it's absolutely vital to our shared interests. So, as I said, with regard to your previous question, we're concerned about what we've seen as a deterioration in respect for freedom of expression in Egypt. Please go ahead.
Same subject, different country, Turkey, freedom of speech and freedom of press. Just today, an indictment against the Turkish journalist, editor-in-chief of Cumhuriyet newspaper, Can Dündar, and the Ankara Red, Erdem Gül, reveals, and indictment is asking 2 times the prison prison and plus 30 years in prison. What's your take on this indictment?
Well, we're obviously very troubled by the reports. You're talking about Cumhuriyet editor-in-chief Can Dündar, and Ankara bureau chief Erdem Gül, as you said, seeking life imprisonment. We've said before, the extraordinarily harsh criminal charges, pretrial arrest, and now the prosecution's call for life sentences raise serious concerns about Turkey's commitment to fundamental principles of freedom of expression, of democracy, of due process, and judicial independence. So we call on Turkish authorities to ensure that all individuals, all organizations, including but not limited to the media, are free to voice a full range of opinions and criticism in accordance with Turkey's constitutional guarantees of media freedom.
Just one more on that. Apparently, those journalists, everybody can be sued, including journalists, is obvious, but these journalists are in jail while they're asking for life imprisonment. And also, Vice President Biden seen one of Can Dündar's family when he was here, and he said that your father is a courageous man. So right after Vice President left Turkey, this indictment and asking for prison, is there another additional angle you see right after Vice President left Turkey and meeting his family and same people are in jail?
I would hope not. We obviously have very, as I said, Turkey's a NATO ally. It's a democracy. It's a friend. It's a partner. We have these kinds of conversations with Turkey about the quality of its democracy, and we're going to continue to raise these kinds of issues as we move forward. We're not going to shy away from those kinds of discussions, and so I would hope there's no link. Please, Arshad, no worries.
There's a UN panel of experts that has issued, I think, a 51-page report about the Saudi-led coalition's activities in Yemen. It says, as I understand it, that it believes that the Saudi-led coalition has been targeting civilians and civilian facilities, and it cites 119 sorties that it regards as having violated international law. do you have any comment on the panel of experts report in particular and in general on the now multiplying allegations that the Saudi-led coalition has done a lot of violence to a lot of civilians in that country?
Well, first of all, with regards to the UN panel of experts report, we've seen media reports. Apparently, this is a leaked UN panel or UN report, so it hasn't been published yet. It hasn't been released to the public. I'm going to wait till it's released publicly to comment on its contents, except to say that clearly we're always concerned about serious allegations of abuse. We take these kinds of accounts very seriously, and the loss of civilian life in any conflict is tragic. And we call on all sides in of the conflict in Yemen to comply with their obligations under international humanitarian law, including the obligation to distinguish between military objectives and civilian objects, and to take all feasible actions to minimize harm to civilians.
Follow up on that one. Have you taken, as the administration, taken any legal advice as to whether, given your support for the Saudi-led coalition, whether you might be complicit in these alleged crimes?
I couldn't speak to any implications for us. I just don't have that legal analysis in front of me. And I would also just say,
Security Council investigation into these allegations.
Well, again, I think we would call on all parties to uphold their international obligations, and that includes Saudi Arabia. I can't speak to any UN Security Council investigation at this point. Let's wait for the UN panel report to be released.
And last one from me. Do you have any updates on the fate of Siamak Namazi, the U.S. citizen reported to be in prison in Iran, who is not among the prisoners who were recently released?
I do not. I'll check on that. I'll get back to you. Take the question. Is that okay? Thank you.